Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Zander Sprague, and I am so excited that you're joining me today. I have a fascinating episode for you. But first, the thought of the day. Life is a participatory sport. What do I mean by that? Well, you want to know what? Your life is going to go on whether you participate today or not. Whether I choose to engage today, my life is still going on. Time still keeps marching on. And I want to encourage you to participate in your life because it's so much better when you're taking part in your life, when you're actually in there doing the things that you dream of doing. We also have to do the things that we have to do. Maybe it's taking out the garbage. Maybe it's picking up the kids from sports practice, or it's cooking a meal. We don't necessarily like that. But if you are participating in your own life, you get to make choices about what you have for dinner, what you're going to talk to your kids about, what you want to do to change your life. As you know, I'm all about Epic Begins with One Step Forward. And when you participate in your life, it is so much better. My update is about Dan McQueen. You might remember him from my podcast a few months ago. Dan is so inspirational, and he is rolling along. I checked in with him recently, and he continues to do such great work to motivate people to overcome the issues. As you might remember, Dan was in an accident, and he's paralyzed, but he hasn't let that stop him from going after all the things, to fully participating in his life. Now, speaking of participating in your life and making sure that you're taking care of yourself, I am honored today to be joined by Dr. Anna Agarwal. Dr. Agarwal, tell us who you are and what you do.
Great. Zander, thanks for having me on the show. I'm a kidney doctor, or better known as a nephrologist. I'm part of a large group, a single specialty group called West Coast Kidney Institute. We have over 50 physicians, and we cover the East Bay, all the way from Concord, all the way down to San Mateo, and we have offices in San Francisco, and we help patients who have kidney problems, high blood pressure, who've had a kidney transplant, or who have various stages of kidney disease or uncontrolled hypertension.
Absolutely. And nephrology is obviously a very specific thing. How, when you were at medical school, did you decide on nephrology?
It's kind of funny. I was doing a rotation in Georgia at Emory, and I had every intent after doing HIV research to become an infectious disease doctor and to work for the CDC and go on these outbreaks.
Right.
And while I was doing this month-long rotation as a fourth-year medical student, I heard a lecture. It's what they call morning report or grand rounds.
Yep.
And it's usually when the residents, after they admit patients overnight, they have to present cases,
Sure.
medical student residents, to an attending. And so everyone is there and you're listening. And I heard this case of a patient with multiple myeloma, which is a type of cancer that affects your bone marrow, and plasma cells are made, and it is a cause of kidney failure, not a top cause of kidney failure. And I heard this lecture and just how the kidney was really instrumental in so many aspects of our physiology, our blood pressure, our red blood cell count, our vitamin D. And that really kind of blew me away, and it really made me want to go back and think about nephrology. And then when I entered residency, I kind of entered with this, wow, nephrology. And I proceeded, I think by second year of residency, I knew I wanted to be a nephrologist, and I applied, and there we are now, 25 years later.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And obviously, I want to talk about our kidneys because they are so important, and taking care of them is so essential. Just to really break it down, what do our kidneys do for us?
Yeah, the kidneys are, of course, I like to think they're the master organ, that they're really...
Not that you're biased at
right,
all.
of course not. I think they are definitely the smartest organ in the body. You know, we'll say maybe on equal par with the brain, but really the kidneys do a lot of things. They control our blood pressure. They help, you know, regulate our blood pressure. They help regulate our volume status in our body. When our body knows that we're dehydrated, there are sensors in our body that will detect, you know, the concentration of sodium might be going up a little bit because we're losing free water through sweat. And they will regulate hormones that either dictate for more urine to go out or for our urine to be concentrated. So we maintain euvolemia, or we maintain our body's homeostasis, or where it should be. The kidneys also help, they're the final step in producing activated vitamin D. The kidneys do a lot. They really, and as you know, if you have kidney failure, you can't live without your kidneys unless you're on dialysis or unless you have a kidney transplant.
Absolutely. And what are some of the common causes of kidney disease, kidney failure and stuff?
So it varies a little bit country to country, but I think as the world is becoming more globalized and our habits are becoming more similar, meaning fast food and the prevalence of diabetes, that is changing worldwide. Number one cause of kidney failure in the US is diabetes. About 40 to 50% of people who are on dialysis, it's due to uncontrolled diabetes, where the diabetes has gotten so bad that, you know, the sugars that are in excess, where they spill over what the body can handle into the urine, they're very toxic to the kidneys. And they create kind of a gooey substance in the kidneys that scars the kidneys. And so that's the number one cause. Number two, pretty close second, is high blood pressure. And the third cause would be what's called a glomerular nephritis, or an inflammation of the kidney. That's maybe 10% of patients. And then there is a very small number of patients who have a genetic cause, something called polycystic kidneys, maybe 5%. And then there could be people who are taking an excess of ibuprofen, Motrin, some of the category of meds called NSAIDs that can cause damage to the tubular interstitium. That's maybe 10% of patients. But by and large, the number of patients we see, it's diabetes and high blood pressure. And most people have both. So it's kind of, they overlap.
And is that primarily type 1 or type 2 or both types of diabetes?
Yeah, definitely, because type 2 is more prevalent.
Right.
We see a lot more people with type 2. Type 1, you know, it can often be diagnosed when you're very young. And so usually when we see people around the 20-year mark or 30-year mark, if their diabetes has not been well controlled, we can start seeing type 1s, you know, develop kidney failure.
I get it. And what are some of the signs that you're having some challenges with your kidney?
You know, unfortunately, kidney failure, like high blood pressure, are silent killers, or they can be, because you really don't have symptoms with kidney failure until you're at the point where you need dialysis. And those symptoms are really vague. They can be, God, I'm just not feeling well. I don't have a cold, a virus, but I'm just feeling sluggish. I'm losing my appetite, or I've got, sometimes patients will describe like a metallic or a bad taste in their mouth or something.
A battery taste.
Yeah, or like a dysgeusia. They have it's a bad taste in your mouth, and they have a distaste for food. They lose their appetite. But those are really when somebody's got kidney disease for a long time and they're really past the point of needing dialysis.
Got it.
Otherwise, you have zero symptoms.
Right.
Zero symptoms. And, this is a reason why it's really important that you're at least screened. Once a year at least, you have a blood test. one of the most important things you can do is get a urinalysis from your doctor and look for abnormal things such as protein and blood in the urine. They are not normal, especially if they're persistent.
Got it.
And that can be one of the things on laboratory tests. The other thing is you're looking at the blood test, and that's a creatinine value. Creatinine normally, it varies by...
There's a range, I think.
Yeah, there's
right?
a range. There's a range. And I would say, from 0.8 to probably 1.2 is probably pretty typical. But if you're a really stocky guy, very muscular, that creatinine value may be a little bit higher. But I would say in general, 0.8 to 1.2. So it's important if you haven't seen the doctor in a long time to definitely get your urine tested, your creatinine. And the biggest thing you can do for yourself is make sure your blood pressure is in check, because with high blood pressure, you have no symptoms either.
Absolutely.
Right? And you know that.
I know that. I will share that I have pretty bad hypertension. Luckily, Dr. Agarwal she takes care of my blood pressure for me, which is great, and has for the last over a decade.
Yeah.
And I've done all the tests to try and figure out what might be the cause. It's not lifestyle, it's what we call idiopathic, meaning we don't know. It's just is. And it's really important. I take it very seriously because I don't want any problems. Yeah. But you're right, I don't notice, I don't feel differently if I take my medicine or don't take my medicine. But it is important. So how does high blood pressure or uncontrolled high blood pressure cause kidney damage?
Yeah, so it can actually, you can have stiffer arteries, and it's just this constant beating of this high blood pressure that can scar down the filtering unit of your kidney, your glomerulus.
Okay.
And so, like you said, can I share how we met? And
yeah, absolutely.
So Zander came to me, and at the time, this is my Castro Valley office, and I think you were going to run a marathon a couple of days later. You came to me maybe like on a Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, it was a half marathon. Yeah.
Half marathon, and we had, he was referred for high blood pressure. And your blood pressure was high in the office, but we didn't have a full sense of how high it was. And I had sent you home with the 24-hour blood pressure cuff.
Yeah.
And I think I got the results on, I think you
put
it on Thursday.
Yeah.
And we got the results back Friday evening. And I remember calling and I'm like, Zander, this is Dr. Agarwal. And I'm like, you can't run your marathon. And he's like, well, or your half marathon. And he's like, what? I'm like, your blood pressure was running like 180 to 200 systolic, the top number. And I was like, this is really dangerous. You can't run.
Yeah.
And I remember.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I remember what you told me. You're like, you could stroke out during the race.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
And what I think, this brings up the point is that it was so shocking to you because you had no symptoms.
Right.
And this is really...
And I had known before I saw you.
Yeah.
I knew I had hypertension. I was being treated for it. I just didn't realize that the medicines I was taking weren't doing a good enough job.
Yeah, right. And I think that's a key takeaway is that high blood pressure and kidney disease don't have symptoms. Patients say to me all the time, oh, well, if I have high blood pressure, I'm going to feel it. I'm going to get a headache. I'm going to feel unwell. And I'm like, no, not necessarily. I would say the large majority of the time, you're not going to feel anything. And the only way you're going to know if you have high blood pressure.
Something really bad happens.
Is if either something bad happens or you have, you visit your doctor every once in a while, and then people will chalk it up. Oh, this is white coat hypertension. I just have high blood pressure because I'm in my doctor's office and I'm nervous. So one of the things you can do, it's not a huge investment, is buy a blood pressure cuff.
Yeah.
Buy a blood pressure cuff and check your blood pressures periodically. You don't have to obsess about it, but you want that number to be around 130/70, or lower, 120 to 130 over 70 to 80. And that is the single biggest preventative thing you can do for yourself to prevent kidney failure. That, and if, checking your blood sugar, making sure you're not a diabetic. And if you are, really taking it seriously, because I think A lot of times with diabetes, I think patients don't know the complications. They don't realize diabetes can equal kidney failure if it's not controlled. Diabetes can equal you go blind in your eyes. Diabetes can equal neuropathy where you have such pain in your legs.
Or
amputations, absolutely.
Blindness.
Yes, you affect the circulation.
Sometimes diabetes might affect your hearing.
So, I think I think the big take home is don't look for symptoms with high blood pressure and diabetes. Be preventative, be proactive.
Absolutely.
I will back up when I say that there's no symptoms. There are certain kidney diseases and certain ways that some kidney diseases like diabetes and inflammatory kidney diseases like the glomerulonephritis. Some people can present with swelling in their feet. And that could be a sign, not necessarily just of kidney disease. It could be kidney disease, heart disease, liver disease. Those are like the 3 diseases that can prevent with persistent swelling. And so if you have a lot of swelling in your legs, it's not going away. You haven't just gotten off a plane. You've not just been sitting, in a car for a long period of time. That warrants further investigation.
Absolutely. And so how do you treat someone who's, let's say, maybe they're not to the point of needing dialysis, but they may be kind of on their way? How do you treat that?
You've got to first, I think the hardest thing is, there's, you control the blood pressure, right? You, depending on what stage they are in their kidney disease, there's 5 stages. Stage 1, not that many people have it. Those are people that may just have high blood pressure. Stage 2 is where you may have a little protein in the urine. And, for the different stages of kidney disease, we look at a calculated value. You will see this on any lab print. It's called the eGFR, which is a fancy term for estimated kidney function. And stage 2 is an eGFR 90 to 61. Stage 3A is 60 to 45. Stage 3B is 44 to 30. And,
So higher's sort of better for you.
Yes, a higher GFR correlates with the lower creatinine value, and that is better. The lower your GFR, the higher your creatinine and the worse your kidney function. When you're at stage 4 and 5 is when you really have to start seriously changing your dietary habits, maybe your fluid intake, because that's when things that are very dangerous like potassium can build up in your body. And potassium can stop your heart. It can stop your heart. It can kill you. It's what lethal injections are given.
Right, potassium chloride, right?
Yes. And so usually when you're stage 3, besides adhering to maybe a low salt diet for high blood pressure or a diabetic low carb diet, you don't have too many restrictions on other electrolytes and things you have to do. But, when you have kidney diseases, it overlaps with other diseases like gout. Gout is when you get a buildup of uric acid, and the kidneys remove uric acid. So if you have stage 4 and 5, you may find that you're having more gout attacks.
Got it.
Take home is that the body, nothing is in a silo. So as a kidney doctor, you really have to look at the whole person, and you have to look at all their disease processes in order to treat the patient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And dialysis is basically the cleaning of the blood. Is that?
Yes, yeah. It's a cleaning of the blood, and it's also kind of regulating your fluid balance. Because at some point, when you're on dialysis or when you're advanced stage of kidney failure, you will stop urinating. Your kidneys will scar down, and you will not produce urine anymore. And so what happens is everything you drink, where's it going to go? If it's not going out as urine, it's going to build up in your lungs. And you're going to get short of breath, and you're going to be in big trouble. And so
you could get edemas, and
absolutely,
which is a big swelling of the extremities.
Absolutely. So when we do dialysis, we regulate both the fluids, decide how much to take off in you, and we clean your blood. So we remove the things that can build up like potassium. we neutralize your blood. So acid builds up when you have kidney failure. So we remove the acid by adding base. So it neutralizes that.
Okay.
And so there's different forms of dialysis. The one where you go to a center, and about 500,000 people, maybe 10% more, are on dialysis in the US. And only, unfortunately, about 10 to 15% do dialysis at home. And that's where you can do it through the stomach, peritoneal dialysis,
Right.
or through the arm, hemodialysis. Whereas, interestingly, in other countries, in Singapore, in China, in Canada, 90+% people do it at home.
Wow.
Why? Because the government forces you to.
Okay.
You have to fail being able to do dialysis at home in order to be able to do it in center.
And what is your feeling in terms of, because I could imagine at home that compliance might not be as much as if you're showing up to a center, it's happening.
You're absolutely right, and I think that is, I think it's a big issue. I think it's a big issue in some of the people that develop kidney failure. It's either they didn't know they had high blood pressure because they don't have symptoms, they didn't know they had diabetes, they weren't educated on how bad their diabetes was, or, oh, I've got a hemoglobin A1C of 8. It's not so bad. Well, it's bad when you have a hemoglobin A1C of 20 years.
Yeah.
You know, normal being 6.4 and below. And so, so compliance definitely is an issue, but I think, this is why I love your slogan, EPIC begins with one step forward, is that I think when you're diagnosed with kidney disease, stage 3, 4, 5, wherever you are in your journey and your medical, the whole medical evaluation, is the sooner you embrace that you've got kidney disease, I think the easier it is to move forward. And I think it's the hardest thing when you have somebody young who's on dialysis. And usually they're from inflammation, glomerulonephritis. But same thing, once you're on dialysis, those people that embrace that, God, I have to watch my diet, I've got to watch my fluids, I have to show up to dialysis in center 3 days a week. And not just show up and be a passive participant.
Right.
But you have to be an active participant.
Definitely.
And when you're active and when you're taking that epic first step, which I think has to happen, those people do much, much better. They
Absolutely.
do. And it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell when somebody is stage 3 and 4. Why? You don't have symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard when you, I mean, I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the hypertension.
Yes.
That it can be hard to say, I feel fine. I don't notice anything.
Yeah.
I know when I first started to work with you, I was running marathons, and you started me on some medications that it changed the way I could run.
Yes.
Because I couldn't run the same way. I had to modify, I had to incorporate a little more walk-run strategy because I would fatigue out if I tried to go too hard. And although I was really bummed about it, and you certainly heard me perhaps whining a little about it, I had to just embrace that I can't do anything about this, but what I can do is accept that this is part of my life.
Yeah.
It's not going to change. There are lifestyle changes I've made. I'm trying to watch my weight. I watch my salt intake. All of that. But I'm not going to be one of these people that loses 20 pounds and all of a sudden doesn't need medication.
Yeah.
That's simply that's not my path.
Yeah. I think you bring up a lot of good points. One, when we talked about your high blood pressure, so most people have what we call essential hypertension or idiopathic. We don't know why they have it. It's just run-of-the-mill hypertension. A very small percentage of people, probably like 3 to 4%, have either a tumor or some hormone that's being secreted that may elevate your blood pressure, a narrowing of your artery that supplies blood to your kidney, or some secondary cause. And of course, as high blood pressure specialists, which nephrologists are, we look for that when somebody presents atypically or they don't have the risk factors. something else I wanted to say, and I lost my train of thought, about, the high blood pressure. So I think that's really important. And I think the other point that's important is that it's not one size fits all. You have to work, and I think really having the experience with you as being an athlete, because not all of my patients are that active, at least at the time they weren't.
Sure.
Is, after that, I became the nephrologist for the Raiders.
Yeah.
So I was seeing some of the Raiders in my office, or their coaches or people that were peripheral, and I really had to keep in mind they're not affecting their exercise tolerance.
Yeah.
And I think, whoever you're working with, if it's a primary care doctor or nephrologist, they need to work with what it is that your personal goals are. And I think, for somebody like you who is very athletic, you have to keep in mind the side effects. And I go over side effects with all my patients. This can cause this can cause this.
Yep.
And some of the meds do cause fatigue. Or if you're a biker or runner, a diuretic, you may be peeing all the time. You may get dehydrated. You may have to drink more. But I think very important working with the individual patient to find out what works for them.
Absolutely. Anna, this has been a fascinating conversation. You and I obviously could talk about this for hours. But sadly, amazingly, our time is up. Imagine
Wow.
that. I know.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
So 2 take-homes, right?
Big,
High blood pressure has no symptoms. Kidney failure often has no symptoms. Get checked. Get a blood pressure cuff. Check your urine.
absolutely. Thank you so much for all of that epic information. Thank you so much for coming in. I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. You can email me at zander@epicbegins.com. And I want to remind you that epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.